All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something that, well, you probably don't think about much, but it's actually running behind the scenes of every app and service you use online. We're talking API rate limiting.
Yeah, it really is everywhere. And we're going to dig into why it matters, drawing from a really interesting session we found on API management. By the end of this, you'll have a whole new appreciation for what keeps the internet humming.
So, to kick things off, let's make sure everyone's on the same page. What exactly is API rate limiting?
It's basically a way to control how many times a client, like an app or another service, can make a request to an API within a specific time period. So think about it this way. Every time you check your social media feed, your app is sending requests to the platform's API.
Okay, so that makes sense. It's like a speed limit for the internet.
Yeah.
But why do we need this?
Oh, there are a ton of reasons. For starters, it stops any one client from hogging all the resources and crashing the system.
Ah, so kind of like preventing a digital traffic jam?
Hmm.
Makes sense.
Exactly. It also helps prevent abuse. Our source gave a great example. Imagine a social media platform without rate limits. Someone could write a program to spam posts at an insane rate, completely drowning out everyone else. Rate limiting helps stop that.
Yeah, the spam filter alone on my email is a lifesaver.
Yeah.
So it's not just about performance, it's about security and fairness too, right?
Absolutely. And the way it does this is actually pretty clever. Our source broke down 4 main types. There's the fixed window, which is like saying, okay, you can only make 1,000 requests per hour. Once that hour is up, the counter resets.
Okay, so a hard limit. What else?
Then you've got sliding window, which is a bit more dynamic. It tracks the number of requests over a rolling time period. So let's say it's a 1-hour window. If you make 500 requests in the first half hour, you've only got 500 left for the rest of that hour.
Gotcha. So it's like a constantly moving target. What were the other two?
Right. So the third one is token bucket. This one's fun to visualize. Imagine a bucket that gets filled with tokens at a steady rate. Each request costs 1 token. If you run out of tokens, you have to wait for the bucket to refill before making more requests.
Kind of like those old school arcade games where you had to keep feeding in quarters. Makes sense. Okay, what about the last one?
Last but not least is the leaky bucket. Think of it like a bucket with a small hole in the bottom. Requests flow in like water, but they can only drain out or get processed at a set rate. This helps smooth out any sudden bursts of traffic.
Got it. So all these different methods are working to keep things running smoothly. But going back to the bigger picture, why should the average person care about API rate limiting? It sounds like a pretty behind-the-scenes thing.
Well, without it, the online world as we know it would be, pretty messed up. I mean, imagine trying to use your favorite app during a huge sale or a breaking news event. If there were no limits on requests, the servers could easily get overloaded and crash, leaving everyone unable to access anything.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. It's kind of like those website crashes you see on Black Friday or when concert tickets go on sale.
Right. Rate limiting is essential for preventing that from happening all the time.
Right. And we touched on this earlier, but the security implications are huge too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Rate limiting is a frontline defense against attacks like DDoS, where someone tries to flood a server with requests to overwhelm it. By limiting the number of requests from a single source, it makes these attacks much harder to pull off. It also makes brute force attacks, where someone tries to guess passwords by repeatedly trying different combinations, much more difficult.
So rate limiting is like having a really good bouncer at the door, keeping the bad guys out and the good times rolling.
Yeah, exactly. And there's another interesting side to it, monetization. Some APIs actually use rate limits to offer different tiers of service. So you might get a free tier with a certain number of requests per month, and then pay for higher tiers with higher limits if you need more.
So it's a business model too. Pretty fascinating. Okay, so where is this all happening? Where is this rate limiting actually implemented?
Well, it happens at a couple of different levels. A common one is at the API gateway, which you can think of as the entry point to a service. Things like AWS API Gateway, Kong Nixinx, they all do rate limiting. But it can also be implemented at the application level, like within the app's code itself. This is often done using middleware in frameworks like Express.js or Flask.
So multiple layers of protection. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But it can't be easy to get this right. What are some of the challenges?
The biggest one is finding the right balance. You need to set limits that are strict enough to protect the system, but not so strict that they prevent legitimate users from doing what they need to do. If the limits are too tight, you'll get a lot of frustrated users who keep hitting that 4 and 29 too many requests error.
Yeah, that's the one that makes me want to throw my phone across the room.
Exactly. And that's where good error handling comes in. The best practice is to design your app to respond gracefully to these errors. Usually that means implementing something called exponential backoff, where your app waits a little bit longer after each failed request before trying again. That way, it doesn't keep hammering the server and making things worse.
Interesting. So the next time I see that dreaded 429, I'll know there's actually a good reason behind it.
Exactly. And that's really what we're hoping you take away from this dive. API rate limiting might seem like a technical detail, but it's actually a crucial part of what makes the online world work.
So to wrap things up, next time you're using your favorite app or browsing a website, take a moment to appreciate the unsung hero API rate limiting working behind the scenes to keep everything running smoothly, securely, and fairly.
It makes you wonder, right? Think about all those apps and services you use daily. What kind of rate limits do you think they have in place? And how are those limits affecting your experience, maybe without you even realizing it?
It's a whole world we don't normally see, but it's definitely worth thinking about. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
See you next time.